everybody, welcome to the Chess Harbor. My name is Raf and today I want to show you two older games. My very first game in the club and then a game about half a year later, both featuring the same kind of opening trap coming out of the Pirc defense. So let me first show you the trap. Start with e4. Black plays d6, d4, knight to f6, knight to c3, g6. This is the main line in the Pirc defense, and now we like to play the move bishop to g5, which is called the Byrne variation. Very simple idea. We're just looking to attack this knight, maybe damage black's pawn structure and play against the weak structure, which would give us some kind of edge in an endgame. But usually that's not going to happen because the logical move by black is bishop to g7, which defends against that threat. And now the main idea we have in this system is to play the move e5 quickly, attacking the knight again. And now black has a couple of ways to respond. Black can either move the knight or take the pawn. I'm gonna show you later the correct way for black to defend against this, but for now I'll show you the trap first. So d takes on e5, e takes on d5, queen takes on d1, rook takes on e1. Now the knight moves, and this is just a blunder because we've got a very interesting way to facilitate against this trap. We play the move h3, which invites black to take this pawn. Black takes the pawn, and now we have a nice attack with knight to d5 with an unstoppable fork on c7. So if black defends against this fork with knight a7, knight a6, we can just take the knight, and we're going to get a very quick checkmate on d8. If black wants to defend against this fork by moving their king into the center, yeah, we're just going to have the same kind of thing really. Eventually we're just going to take the rook, and here, yeah, their pawn is still going to die. Black can't castle anymore. You might still end up getting a ton of material here. The knight is going to get out. This position is really bad for black. So that's a very simple way to win the game. Now black doesn't have to take it there. So black can play other moves than moving the knight forwards, which doesn't lose the game immediately. We're going to show that later. Now I want to show you my game first, where this trap occurred. So the game starts with the move d4, not with the move e4, but we quickly transpose. My opponent plays g6. I play knight to c3, knight to f6, and now the move e4 and d6. So we see we've transposed into the same kind of position, but coming from a d4 opening. Play bishop to g5, bishop to g7, and now the move e5, thrusting in the center, inviting mistakes by black. And black accepts with d takes on e5, d takes on e5, queen takes on d1, rook takes on d1, and the blunder move knight to g4. So again, I poke the knight so it goes backwards. Knight takes on e5 and knight to d5 with the deadly attack on c7. And my opponent here, he saw that the king was in trouble, so he played a better move which does not lead to checkmate. He plays the move f6. Now of course the position is still going to be losing because the rook is still going to be lost, but at least it's not going to be checkmate. So I first take on c7 with check. The king can only move to the king side and can't attack my knight, so king to f7, now bishop to f4, knight to e6, and I just grab the rook because why not? And bishop to f5, rook, bishop to c4 check. This diagonal is a little bit weak. It's an excellent diagonal for my bishop to be on, so I'll play this intermediate check. e6, bishop to b3 to protect against his bishop's threat. Knight to e7, c3, knight to a6. So now the rook attacks my knight, so I dip out with knight to c7, knight to c5, knight to f3. Still have to develop my king side, so I want to get my king side out. I was a little bit worried about bishop to c4 here because bishop to c2 might be very annoying, so I'll just if now the knight takes, I'll just accept that he can take back a pawn. It's quite fine because I'm up a rook. Knight takes on b3, a takes on b3. My opponent first plays the move e5, bishop to e3, b6 because his pawn is attacked. Now I play b4, so now this would not win a pawn anymore. Rook to c8, knight to d5, knight to c6, castles, bishop to e6, now pawn to c4. So my queenside pawns are a little loose. They're under some pressure by the knight, by the bishop, by the rook. But as I said earlier, I don't mind losing a pawn or two here, because if I can get the pieces off the board, I'm still going to be up a piece. So losing a couple of pawns for a full rook is nothing. So he plays e4, knight to d4, bishop takes on d5, c takes on d5, knight takes on b4. So he wins back a pawn, but I'm going to be able to trade some more pieces. So knight to c6, knight takes on d5, rook takes on d5. Quickly want to show that if the opponent would take with the knight on c6 there, it leads to almost the same thing. That's pretty much transposition almost. Knight takes on d5, rook takes on d5, rook takes on c6, and rook takes on d7, so it's the exact same position. King to g8, rook f to d1, f5, and yeah, now this also loses more material because I have a very strong attack on his king now. Rook to d8 check, bishop blocks. Now my bishop can come to h6 with a very strong pin on his king. Rook to f6, rook a8, g5, rook d to d8, rook takes on h6, rook takes on f8 check, king to g7, rook f to d8, e6, rook takes on a7, king to f6, rook takes on h6, king to e5, rook h to d7, doubling up again, king f4, and rook d6. Now he's going to lose another pawn or the rook, and he just resigned here because the position of course was already hopeless. Now there's nothing left to play anymore. So that was my very first OTB tournament game I ever played. I'm very happy with this win. Of course it was quite a cheap win with the trick, but still feels very good in the first round of a tournament to get a win like this. So now let me show you the next game where my opponent actually responded correctly. So the game starts with e4, d6, d4, knight to f6, knight to c3, g6, so the Pirc defense. Now bishop to g5, the Byrne variation as we're looking at, bishop to g7, and our favorite advance e5. D takes on e5, d takes on e5, and the move queen takes on d1 again, rook takes on d1, and now the correct move, knight f to d7. So why is this move correct? It gets out of the pin, but it manages to defend against this threat. Now it doesn't fall for the idea that you can win this pawn. This is the correct move. You could also play this move earlier, so you don't have to trade the queens. After move e5 you can also play this move immediately, and this might even be a better way to play, because now the queen actually helps defend some sensible some sensitive spots on the black side. Now for me personally, this position would still be better for white. The engine believes this is dead equal, but I believe after the move f4 you got very easy development for white. The pieces can come to d3, to f3, queen goes to e2 or d2. You can either castle long or short, it doesn't matter, but either way you're gonna have an easier time to play, I feel like, because it's very easy to attack with a move like h4, h5, just sending Harry down the board. And you're playing against this entombed bishop because you have a pawn on e5. The pawn is firmly locked with the two supporting buddies, so it's a very strong pawn triangle. And even if black has undermining moves like c5, this position is very, very hard for black to play, because opening up the position like that, you can see your development is just easier with white, so it might be deadly for black to try and open the position up too much. So that might even be a better way to respond, but my opponent here responded with the knight move after the queens have been traded off, which is still good. But this allows for a nice new move that does not work if the queens would remain on. That is the move e6, a very interesting pawn sacrifice. You can't really decline the pawn sacrifice because the knight is attacked. If the knight just moves, you're going to take on f7 and the king is going to be in trouble. So you kind of have to accept the pawn sacrifice, f takes on e6. And now the position is just really simple for white to play. The reason why this sacrifice is strong is because white gets easy development. You can develop with tempo here, the weak square, you can target the weak square on d4 with the knight. At some point the rook might come to the e-file, and you see that there are kind of these weak squares all around black's king. This diagonal is also a little weak. There could be potential that this diagonal could be weak someday, so there is these sensitive spots around black's king. So we continue with knight to f3, knight to c6, and this move kind of just invites white to take the initiative with the knight to b5. So they're really simple, just going to target the pawn on c7 with the fork here. So black has to do something about that. The only thing they can do to defend is move their king, which is not the best way to defend. I think it might have even been better just to castle, just lose this pawn, and you're going to get a position like this where white has already won back material and black is already just weaker, but at least the king is now safe. But that's not what black did. Black moved the king, and now I played a little bit of a slow move. I played the move c3, blocking this bishop's diagonal, but it might have been better just to play the move bishop e3 with the new threat of knight g5 with a new fork. So there is no real time to gobble up on these pawns, especially not because it opens up another file for white to use. So my opponent plays a6, play knight to d4, knight takes, bishop takes, and rook takes. It's a very normal idea for my opponent. So she's up a pawn, so it's normal that she wants to trade down pieces, but the absence of the dark square bishop now makes these squares also weak. So now I have a bishop pair on a semi-open board. That's really nice for white to just dominate the position here. So my opponent puts the rook on f8, put the bishop on c4 now with tempo against the pawn. My opponent decided that it would be better just to sacrifice the pawn now, that it's better just to try and develop. Plays the move c5, kicking the rook away, move the rook to d2, and now just king to e8, getting out of this pin because, yeah, the bishop just wants to move at some point, and now it's not happening anytime soon. So I just take the pawn, bishop takes on e6, knight to e5, offering a trade here, but I really don't want that because look at this bishop, it's just superbly placed on this diagonal, and this diagonal is also weak. So I really do want to keep that bishop. So I play bishop back to b3, bishop to f5, now I castle. Now the rook can join in various ways. And my opponent just immediately blunders. She plays the move h6, which just loses a pawn. Yeah, it was already a hard position to play. Even in this position, you try and come up with a move for black without losing. It's really hard. The knight is kind of stranded. The bishop is potentially a target. The king is still weak, the rooks are not connected, so the position is very hard. So my opponent immediately cracks here with the move h6, which I can just take, attack the rook, and the rook has no good place to go. If the rook goes here, it's just taken. If the rook goes here, you get a fork. If the rook goes anywhere else, it's also just taken. If the rook goes to f6, you also get this kind of skewer. So my opponent puts the rook on f7, which is, yeah, I'm put it as a double question mark as well, but I just take the rook because why not? I'm just up material now, and my opponent resigned here because the position, yeah, it's hopeless to play. So that shows two quick ways that the trap actually does work. One where you can just win a lot of material out of the opening, and one where you get this very interesting dynamic pawn sacrifice with the move e6. And I'd recommend you try it out in your games. It's very fun to play, especially in faster time controls like blitz and bullet, but as you can see, and even in classical, it still packs a punch. And even though the engine says that it's an equal position, I think it's much easier to play for white. It's actually a lot of fun, so definitely hope you try it out in some of your games. I hope to see you guys in my next video. Thanks for watching.